I never thought that at 68, I'd be facing the last fight of my life. Not against some terrible disease, you just take that on the chin. Right? But against paperwork and the kind of greed that can only grow in a perfect little suburban cul-de-sac. They say Mother's Day is supposed to be sunshine and gratitude. But for me, it was always the day I remembered just how far apart my son and I had drifted. We used to be a unit. Me, a nurse's aide who worked 40 years smelling of antiseptic and strong coffee, him. My Alexander, who used to draw me pictures of us holding hands under a yellow sun. Every shift I worked, every aching back muscle, was for his education. I finally got him through school. Got him that systems engineer job. And thought, Ellie, you did it, he's set. But then came Britt. She arrived like a high-gloss, perfect little brochure for the American dream. Marketing consultant, she called herself, always talking about their trips to Vegas, or her latest designer handbag. Or their perfectly coordinated home in that new subdivision. It was all so high-key. I remember walking into their place, all granite countertops and stainless steel, and it always smelled faintly of new money and desperation. It felt cold, despite the forced warmth from the recessed lighting. My own apartment, which smelled like my old coffee pot and the comforting must of old books, felt 1,000 miles away. The real distance, though, was in my son's eyes. Alex would come home from work, and instead of his easy laugh, there was this permanent knot of stress in his shoulders. He was caught between his wife's demands for a bigger lifestyle and the crushing reality of their mortgage and the endless stream of bills. When he talked, he didn't look at me, he looked just past my left shoulder. Like he was reading cue cards Britt had taped to the wall. Mom, Britt and I have to stick to a strict budget right now. The taxes on the house. You know, he'd say. I'd just nod, wiping the counter, because I knew the real issue wasn't the taxes. The real issue was that Britt had convinced him I was a burden. A financial anchor holding down their glittering future. The truth was, I was the one in crisis. A few weeks ago, I got the final copay notice for my valve replacement. $25,000, my small retirement savings, which I'd been hoarding like a squirrel for my whole working life. Didn't even touch it. I was staring down the barrel of losing my home. All because of one single procedure. One Saturday morning, I was waiting for Alex to call. He was supposed to help me move some boxes, but the call came from Britt instead. Ellie, she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Alex can't make it. Big presentation deadline. Super high stress. I could hear the clink of cocktail glasses in the background. Definitely not the sound of a high-stress office deadline. He told me to tell you, you just need to be more respectful of our boundaries. Boundaries, that's the word they use when they mean distance. I walked into Alex's deserted home office later that week. I still had a key. Bless him, to drop off some paperwork. That's when I saw it, tucked under a stack of glossy marketing magazines that reeked of Britt's expensive perfume, was a statement from an investment account. It wasn't just low, it was nearly empty. And underneath that, a transaction receipt for a sketchy place called the Golden Wheel Casino. $1.500 withdrawal. Britt wasn't a marketing consultant. She was a liar who was bleeding my son dry. My heart didn't just skip a beat, it dropped into my stomach. It wasn't just that I was going to lose my house, it was that my son was married to a destructive phantom. That night, I sat in my quiet apartment. The distant whistle of a train sounded lonely. I didn't weep or shout. I just stared at the $25 copay bill and then at the number for my old neighbor. Robert Kruger. Robert used to work for the FBI before he retired to the suburbs. He's the kind of man who understands that sometimes, to save the one you love, you have to break every boundary they thought you had. I picked up the phone. The fight was over. The strategy had begun. I hung up the phone with Britt. That plastic sweetness still buzzing in my ear. I looked out the window at the endless gray of the Midwest sky. It was May, but it felt like November. They wanted boundaries? Fine. I was about to show them what true boundaries looked like. The little voice in my head, the one that always told me to be the bigger person. To avoid confrontation. The one that had kept me silent for 3 years, that voice was finally exhausted. Seeing that casino withdrawal. Seeing the truth of their debts. Seeing the fear in Alex's eyes every time he mentioned their finances, it finally gave me permission to be savage. I called Robert Kruger. He wasn't just a neighbor from the church potluck, he was a retired FBI surveillance specialist who, in his words, missed the action. I didn't waste time with small talk. Robert, I said, my voice steady, I need to set a trap. And I need you to make sure it's completely legal. I need proof of my daughter-in-law's greed and her father's corruption. And I need to do it with $25,000. He was silent for a beat. I heard the scrape of his chair as he leaned in. Ellie, you know I'd do anything for you. But $25,000? That's a serious risk. It's the only risk left. Robert, I countered, feeling a sudden surge of adrenaline. She needs to be exposed in a moment of pure, unadulterated selfishness, when the stakes are highest. I won't stop talking about money, about my health bills, about the copay, until she believes that cash is her only out. Robert agreed. He guided me through the legal nuances. The voice-activated recorder was permissible on my own person or in a vehicle. Placing it discreetly in Alex's house, however, needed finesse. That's why he showed me the USB device. It was the size of a stick of gum. Easy to hide behind a family photo frame that already sat on their mantle. The money itself was the next hurdle. I certainly didn't have $25,000 to burn on a social experiment. Robert, ever the resourceful one, connected me to a local theater production house. It's called Prop Money or Movie Cash. He explained over a burner phone he insisted I use. Perfectly legal to own, as long as it adheres to the rules, no identical texture. For motion picture use only, clearly visible. It looks real enough to fool the greedy. Ellie, that's all we need. A few days later, a thick, pristine stack of $100 bills arrived. It felt disturbingly real. I sat in my quiet kitchen, spreading the fake bills out on the table, counting them. $25. This represented my entire medical future. My home, my security, all reduced to a stack of play money. But as I counted, I didn't feel despair, I felt a chilling sense of control. My heart hardened. I wasn't the sweet old nurse's aide anymore. I was a strategist, fighting to save my son from a financial vampire. I reached out to my sister Gabby and my neighbor Marcus, who had known Alex since he was a kid. I gave them coded instructions for Mother's Day. They didn't know the details, but they knew I was finally drawing the line. The stage was set, the bait was laid, all that was left was for Britt to take it. Mother's Day rolled around like a slow-moving train you knew was going to hit. When Alex called, his voice was tight, high-pitched, the voice of a man reciting a script. "Hey, Mom," he chirped. "Happy Mother's Day. Britt and I are having a little brunch at our place. Can you be here by noon? We've got something special planned." My heart ached because I knew the something special was a performance designed to keep up appearances for their new suburban crowd. But I kept my voice light. "That sounds wonderful, honey. Of course, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world." I dressed in my favorite yellow linen dress. The one Alex always said made me look like spring. I wanted to look like the mother he remembered, the unconditional love. The strength, not the financial problem he'd been conditioned to see. The bus ride felt eternal. Every mile brought me closer to that perfectly curated house, which I knew was a fortress built on debt and deceit. I arrived precisely at noon. The house, painted a trendy, neutral gray, was exactly as cold as I remembered. Alex opened the door with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. His hug was quick, nervous, a flash of warmth squeezed out before Britt could see. "Mom, you made it. Come in, come in." The dining room table was set with expensive china and a catered spread. Britt was nowhere near a stove, it looked like high-end takeout. Still packaged in silver containers. Britt floated in from the kitchen, wearing a shimmering gold dress that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. Her smile was like a sheet of ice, perfectly smooth, utterly frigid. "Ellie, you look, well, happy Mother's Day. Have a seat." The conversation was a masterpiece of pretense. Britt dominated, talking about her non-existent, high-stress marketing deadlines, their upcoming trip to the Hamptons, also non-existent, and the difficulty of maintaining a trophy house. She would glance at me sideways, making sure her every word landed. "See how busy and important we are? Your life of cleaning floors means nothing here. I just smiled, sipped my unsweetened iced tea, and listened. But as I listened, I was working. While Britt was bragging about her new imported olive oil, I discreetly reached behind the framed photo on the mantel, a ridiculously posed picture of Britt and Alex. My fingers brushed against the tiny, hard edge of the voice-activated USB recorder. It was securely in place. Robert was watching from his unmarked white delivery van parked 2 blocks down the street. Camera running. The bait was set. The hook was baited. Now, we just needed the biggest, greediest fish to swim into the trap. The front doorbell rang, a chime echoing in the tense silence. Alex jumped. Oh, that must be Britt's parents. He mumbled, sounding terrified. I invited them. Too. My heart sank a little deeper. But I maintained my composure. Perfect. The audience had arrived. This wasn't going to be just a family confrontation, it was going to be an exposure. Complete with witnesses, John and Marge Caldwell, the high-status, self-proclaimed contributors to society, walked in as though the house belonged to them. Ready to judge the proceedings. The air in the room didn't just thicken, it became pressurized. Waiting for the inevitable explosion. The chime rang, and the atmosphere in that overpriced suburban house went from tense to toxic. John and Marge Caldwell walked in, dressed like they were attending a political fundraiser. Not a simple family brunch. John, the county supervisor, was a big man with a forced, booming laugh that didn't quite cover the desperation in his eyes. Marge was all sharp angles and expensive jewelry. They air-kissed Britt and then gave Alex a dismissive nod. They looked at me, the simple nurse's aide, and their expressions went flat. I was an inconvenient fact of Alex's past. A broken picket fence in their otherwise immaculate American dream tableau. Ellie, John said, not even attempting to use my first name. Good to see you manage the trip. These buses can be so unreliable. Can't they? I met his gaze, my smile serene. Oh, the number 9 is always on time. John, unlike some of those infrastructure projects your office manages. Britt cut in immediately, her voice shrill. Mom, Dad, come sit. We were just talking about this amazing new marketing campaign I'm running. She deliberately pivoted the attention back to herself, desperate to control the narrative. But the Caldwells weren't there for marketing. They were circling. Marge leaned in, her voice hushed but loud enough for all of us to hear. Brittany tells us you've been having some trouble with your medical bills. Eleanor? Such a shame. You know, John's office sees this all the time. People who simply didn't plan ahead. The subtext was clear. You're poor. You're a failure. You're Alex's burden. Alex flinched, shifting uncomfortably. But he said nothing, the hallmark of a man paralyzed by his manipulative wife. Then John chimed in, loud and arrogant. The truth is, folks, real financial planning is about liquidity. Cash on hand. Britt and Alex are doing everything right. Saving up. Frankly, they need every cent. I've had to float them a temporary loan myself to manage the pressures of a big promotion I'm expecting. It's high stress, high reward. A man needs to be liquid in this economy. He kept stressing the word, liquid. Glancing pointedly at Britt. That was my cue. That single word, liquid, told me everything. John needed cash. And he needed it now. Likely to silence a problem tied to his impending political corruption exposure. Britt was using the fabricated crisis to prime Alex for a huge cash request. I watched Britt's face, a predator watching her prey. She was coiled and ready. My own hands, resting calmly on my lap, were covering the small USB recorder I knew was drinking in every single damning word. The game was in play. All I had to do was wait for the trap to spring. The air in the room was brittle. John Caldwell's insistence on being liquid was the final piece of the puzzle. I knew the moment had arrived. Alex, visibly sweating under the pressure, cleared his throat. He looked like a man facing a firing squad. Mom. His voice was shaky, raw with a confusing mix of guilt and love. I have something for you. He disappeared into the master bedroom. Britt and her mother exchanged a look, a fast, silent confirmation that made my stomach turn. It was the look of partners in crime who knew the score. They shifted in their seats, waiting for the prize. John Caldwell puffed out his chest. The picture of a man preparing to receive his due. When Alex returned, he held a thick, white envelope. My heart pounded, not with hope, but with the cold, hard realization that my own son was about to be broken by the woman he loved. He walked over, knelt down beside my chair like he used to when he was 7. Asking me to fix his favorite toy. "Mom," he began, his voice breaking, "you spent your life smelling like detergent and hospital soap just so I could have a shot. You paid off my college debt when I couldn't. This is for your health. For that copay, please, buy yourself something special. You deserve peace." He handed me the envelope, his fingers trembling. It wasn't just money, it was 3 years of repressed love. 3 years of guilt, all wrapped in a few inches of paper. I took it, my own hands shaking. I felt the weight of the prop cash. Then, Britt struck. She moved with the speed of a viper. "No, wait," she shrieked. Her perfectly sculpted mask cracked, revealing pure, ugly desperation. She lunged, snatching the envelope from my grasp with a brutal yank that genuinely stung my fingers. "That is not for her," Britt screamed, holding the envelope tight against her golden dress. "That money is from our joint account. It's for our future, and our future requires us to save my father from his situation. He's the one who's actually important in this town. Alex, not some old," she caught herself before saying the final slur. But the intent hung heavy and filthy in the air. Alex stumbled back, his face white, finally seeing her. "Brittany, what are you doing? Give that back to Mom. It's her medical money." She ignored him, turning on her heel with vicious finality. "Dad, take it. You deserve it more than anyone in this room. Get rid of that debt. You have until the end of the month." John Caldwell stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with greedy relief. He took the envelope from his daughter's hand, meeting my gaze with a mocking, victorious smirk. The theft was complete. The manipulation was public. The trap had sprung. And then, I burst out laughing. It wasn't a sweet chuckle. It wasn't hysterical weeping. It was a raw, booming, honest-to-God belly laugh. It started low, a guttural sound, and then erupted, cutting through the silence like broken glass. I laughed the deep, freeing laugh of a woman who had just seen a perfectly laid plan execute exactly as intended. The three of them froze, Britt's face twisted in confusion. John clutching the envelope, Alex staring at me, bewildered. "Oh, my dear, sweet Britt," I managed, wiping a genuine tear of pure joy from my eye. "Did you really think I was that stupid?" My laughter died down, leaving an echoing silence in the room that was heavier than any shout. John Caldwell, still clutching the envelope, looked like a deer caught in the headlights. Britt's face was a mask of furious, terrified confusion. "What's wrong with you, Ellie?" Britt hissed, her voice shaking. "Are you having a breakdown? Give me a real reason why you're laughing." I stood up slowly, my yellow dress feeling like a suit of armor. I walked over to the mantel where the framed photo of Britt and Alex stood. I reached behind it, my fingers deliberately slow and steady. "I'll give you 3 reasons. Darling," I said, pulling out the tiny black USB device. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger like a priceless jewel. "Reason number 1. The Caldwells stared at the device, their eyes wide. Alex, however, finally moved. He looked from the recorder to my face. A slow dawning horror giving way to confusion and then something like awe. "Mom, what is that?" "It's a voice-activated recorder. Honey," I said, my tone gentle for Alex, cutting for the others, "and it's been recording every single word spoken in this room for the last hour. Including your mother's confession of theft and her father's desperate pleas for liquidity." I then walked to the window and tapped the glass. "See that unmarked white van down the street? Reason number 2. That's Robert, my friend from the PTA, the former FBI surveillance specialist. He has been filming this entire performance with a long-range lens. Every insult, every grab, every look of pure greed is on high-definition video." Britt let out a ragged, desperate noise. "That's illegal. I'll sue you for harassment and wiretapping." "Oh, my sweet, predictable Britt," I countered, shaking my head. "We're in the state of, insert generic US state, darling. I was legally invited into this house. The conversation involves me directly. And the recording clearly shows a crime in progress, you stealing my property. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson ensured every step was legal before I even bought the prop money. John Caldwell finally broke. He looked down at the white envelope he held like it was radioactive. The realization hit him, slow and sickening. The money, give me the money back. John, Britt screamed, reaching for the envelope. We need to get rid of it. It's evidence. John, completely rattled, fumbled with the thick wad of $100 bills and dropped the whole pile onto the expensive Persian rug. He backed away, hands up, sweat beading on his forehead. I bent down, picking up a single bill. I held it up to the light, letting the tension build one final, exquisite time. And now, I announced, my voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. For reason number 3, the best reason of all. I flipped the bill over, pointing to the fine print near the edge. This beautiful $25,000 is completely worthless. It's prop money, movie cash, for motion picture use only, is printed right here. You just committed grand larceny over paper. Ladies and gentlemen, the sheer, staggering magnitude of the failure crashed down on them. Britt gasped, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. Marge slumped back against the sofa, her expensive jewelry suddenly looking cheap. Alex, however, stepped forward and gently picked up another fake bill. Examining it closely, a strange, hard smile touched his lips. He finally understood. Part 7. The paper trail page facing up. Ellie's narration is relentless now, delivering the final, crushing blows with cold precision. The tone is sharp, authoritative, and utterly confident. The sight of that fake dollar bill was enough to shatter their fragile reality. John Caldwell stared at the carpet, breathing raggedly. Britt's defiance had evaporated, replaced by raw, trembling fear. She was cornered. Alex, however, was galvanized. He looked at me, no longer confused, but with a gaze of absolute, rock-solid admiration. He was finally seeing the real fight, the one I'd been fighting for years. Mom, he whispered, his voice gaining strength. What else do you know? Tell me everything. Everything, I affirmed, my voice ringing with finality. I walked over to the side table, picked up my large, leather purse, the same one Britt always snickered at for being vintage, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. The manila envelope was the ultimate symbol of the underestimated working class. This, I announced, holding the envelope up, is the actual paper trail. And the truth is far worse than a fake $25,000. I pulled out the first document. Its pristine print a stark contrast to the chaos in the room. Let's start with you, Britt. Your prestigious high-end marketing consultant job? This is a termination notice from 6 months ago. You weren't laid off, you were fired for fraudulent expense reports and petty theft of company property. All those high-stress deadlines were you trying to cover up your lies on LinkedIn. Britt let out a cry of raw, guttural panic. That's a lie. That's harassment. No, sweetheart, it's not, I countered, pulling out a second document. This is a statement showing your gambling addiction. Over $15,000 drained from your joint savings account in the last 4 months at the Golden Wheel Casino. The money Alexander thought was going toward your mortgage was going to the slots. Alex closed his eyes, a flicker of profound betrayal crossing his face. His hands clenched into tight fists. He looked at his wife. And the love, I saw with a painful relief, was completely gone. I didn't wait for him to speak. I moved on to the parents. The true puppet masters. And Supervisor Caldwell. I addressed John, whose face was pale and slick with sweat. You're right. You need to be liquid. This document is a report from an internal whistleblower in the county office, showing you've been running a scheme to award fraudulent contracts to shell companies. Companies, curiously enough, registered under Marge's maiden name. You need the $25 not for a bridge loan, but to pay off an immediate threat to your political corruption scheme before it hits the headlines. John lunged, not toward me, but toward the document. Give me that. You have no right to my private information. Alex intercepted him with a speed I hadn't seen in years. You have no right to my mother, John, and you have no right to the lies you built your life on. He shoved the supervisor back, the engineer in him realizing he'd been building his life on a faulty blueprint. I took the final, most devastating step, looking directly at my son. I unlocked my phone and played the audio I'd recorded earlier, not the confrontation, but the soft, insidious conversation from part 4. Britt's voice, cold and clear. He just needs to be more respectful of our boundaries. He sees you as a burden. We need every cent he makes. The sound of his wife's casual contempt for his mother, played back in that sterile, expensive room, was the ultimate poison. Alex stood straight, every inch the strong, decent man I raised. Brittany, he said, his voice flat and final, like the closing of a coffin lid. You didn't just steal money from my mother. You stole my life for 3 years. This isn't just over. It's incinerated. The fallout was instant and absolute. The moment Alex finished speaking, the silence was broken only by the frantic sound of Britt's weeping and John Caldwell's low, desperate pleading. Alexander, please, she's your wife. This is all this old woman's fault. She trapped us. Britt shrieked, making one last, desperate lunge to grab his arm. Alex pulled away with a movement that was decisive and cold. There was no confusion left in his eyes, only profound disappointment. Take your parents and go. Britt, now. The house is in both our names. But by tomorrow, my lawyer will be filing the papers. You have 24 hours to pack your essential belongings. He walked to the front door and threw it open. The sight of Robert Kruger's white van down the street, and the knowledge that more witnesses, my sister Gabby, my neighbor Marcus, had seen the Caldwells' panicked exit, was the final humiliation. Britt and her parents stumbled out of the perfect suburban house, their entire fabricated life collapsing around them. When the front door closed, the click of the lock felt like the loudest sound in the world. Alex didn't speak for a long time. He sank onto the sofa, the expensive leather creaking under his weight, and buried his face in his hands. I didn't rush him. I knew the man I raised needed to process not just the theft of the money, but the theft of his reality. I sat beside him, gently resting my hand on his shoulder. My touch was light, but firm. You don't have to apologize. Honey, I finally murmured. You were the victim of a very clever con artist. She didn't just want your money, she wanted to isolate you. That's what manipulators do. He lifted his head, his eyes red but clear. I let her make you feel like a burden. Mom, I believed her. She made me feel guilty for the college debt you helped me clear. And she used that guilt against you. I was so blind, so stupid. You were in love, I corrected softly, and that's what makes us human. My only goal was to make sure that the next lie she told wouldn't cost you everything. Alex then reached for my hand. He held it tight, squeezing it with the strength I hadn't felt in years. The real $25, he said, his voice catching. I moved it to a separate account right before I gave you the fake envelope. I had a weird feeling. I want you to have it. For your surgery. And for finally showing me who you are. I smiled. The $25, the real one, was secondary now. The return of his trust, his clarity, was the true prize. The following months were painful but freeing. Alex filed for divorce, using the recorded evidence to expose Britt's financial recklessness and emotional abuse, leading to a swift, favorable settlement for him. Supervisor John Caldwell's corruption scandal hit the papers 2 weeks later. Exactly as I predicted. 6 months after the worst Mother's Day of my life, Alex and I were back in my little kitchen, sharing a simple dinner. He was laughing again, a genuine, deep, shoulder-shaking laugh. You know, Mom, he said, looking at me with a reverence that felt better than any gift. I always thought of you as just the hardworking, loving woman who saved me from scraped knees. I never knew you were also a savage strategist, an FBI asset, and a brilliant tactician. You didn't just save me from Britt, you saved me from myself. I winked. Don't forget the nurse's aide part. Honey, we're good at surveillance. We know where to hide things. And we always have a plan. I poured him another cup of coffee. The window was dark, but the room felt warm, peaceful, and clean. The boundaries were finally healthy. The truth was out, and my family, what little of it mattered, was whole again. The story of Eleanor, Ellie, Johnson isn't just a shocking tale of suburban theft. It's a profound look at the quiet battlefield of the American family, where love is often weaponized and medical bills can feel more threatening than any villain. The core message here is one of vital self-preservation. Never underestimate the power of an underestimated person. For years, Ellie's strength was measured by her sacrifice, her silence, her unconditional support, her ability to make herself smaller so her son could shine. Britt, the antagonist, exploited this beautiful flaw, using psychological manipulation and financial lies to isolate Alex and treat his mother as a dispensable burden. Ellie's final, savage act, setting the legal trap with prop money and airtight evidence, was not an act of malice, but an extraordinary act of love. She recognized that words and gentle appeals were useless against a predator. She needed to shatter the illusion for Alex to save him from himself. This narrative holds a powerful lesson for every adult in America struggling to maintain healthy boundaries with manipulative family members. Clarity is the ultimate kindness. Sometimes, to save a relationship, you must be willing to risk breaking it entirely. Ellie chose to expose the ugly truth rather than maintain a false, suffocating peace. She proved that the wisdom and resources of the older generation, often dismissed by the superficiality of modern life, are formidable. She regained her dignity, her peace, and most importantly, her son's genuine, clear-eyed respect. If this story of sacrifice, strategic defense, and ultimate vindication resonates with the quiet battles you've faced with your own family boundaries or financial pressures, we want to hear from you. What was the pivotal moment when you realized you had to stop being nice and start being clear? Share your story of resilience and clarity in the comments below. Stay strong, stay sharp, and cherish the people who see your worth.